in college, I was working at a paper warehouse one summer after my freshman year. My roommate, my friend from high school, and we just loaded trucks, filled orders, did all this stuff at the warehouse. We had to punch a clock early in the morning. Sometimes we were late, and on the way to the paper warehouse, right before, one of the last turns we get there, there's this crossroad, and there's a stop sign, but you can see forever. We're kind of coming down this long incline, going downhill, and you can see forever. I can see on this road where there's a stop sign, I can see half a mile that way and half a mile that way. And in my mind, I was like, why is that stop sign there? This should just be a yield sign. So me and my buddy in my truck, this is a confession, this is a learn from my mistakes example. I decided I'm not going to stop at that stop sign that morning. And I cruise on through, and because I had stopped at that stop sign every other time, I found out why there's a stop sign there, I think. My truck hit this little dip in the road, and then I went airborne. And, if you ever watched the Dukes of Hazzard, that's what I felt like. I had plenty of time to think about my mistake because my friend and me were in the top roof of the cab of this pickup truck, and we're flying through the air, and I can't see around me because as it went, the front hit, airborne, the back hit, and then, because there's no weight in the back of the truck, we were flying through the air at a really bad angle, and we hit the road. I don't know how we didn't flip totally over, because after work, we hit, we bounced, we were like, oh my goodness. We go to work, everything. After work, I come back, and I stop, and I see these two gouges in the pavement. I had leaf springs. Some of you don't know where that is. It's okay. I have leaf springs on the front of my pickup. They're right up underneath the bumper. For those to gouge the pavement like they did, my truck had to be at almost a 90-degree, like 80-degree angle or something when it hit. And with the momentum, I think God probably saved us from flipping all the way over. And I measured it, and it was like 100 feet from like the stop sign that we flew in the air. God put a stop sign for us in our weekly routine for a reason. We may not want to stop there. We may not understand the reason why. Why is it? God, that's not that important. And if we don't do it, we may cause more harm than good. See Abraham, see Saul, see all of these examples that we've already mentioned. We don't like Sabbath because we don't like waiting. Part of the problem is that we don't like Sabbath because we see it as doing nothing. We see it as being passive and doing nothing for a day or a half day or whatever. And that's not what it was. It was more preparing. It was more waiting on God, praying, talking to Him. And if you do it that way, your soul finds rest and you understand why God commanded it. If you see it as just waiting for no reason, then you're not going to want to do it, and you probably won't do it. All right, sorry, sidebar. Shauna Turner, some of you know her, some of you may not. She moved away a few years ago back to Texas. Her dad had cancer, given 6 months to live, and so she moved back, and that was about 5 years ago now, I think. So, and her dad is still alive and doing well. His cancer has gone away, thank God. All right, this is her daughter Emma, and Shauna moved here a long time ago to work with us in the urban ministry. The urban ministry, St. Paul, with Hmong people and people in projects that this church helped start and helped support while we were doing it. And she moved here to be a social worker in St. Paul because she was a social worker in Texas, had her master's, had experience, and she thought, I'll move up there, I'll get a job. Twin Cities is like social work capital of the world. I'll be able to get a job real easily, and then on the side, in my free time, I'll be able to work with the urban ministry. And she got here, and she couldn't get a job. And interviews got canceled. It was really strange. And she kind of spent her savings. It was about gone. And I said, Sean, have you ever thought about just working for the urban ministry full time, raising support? And she said, yes, I've been thinking that's what God wants me to do. So she did it. Um, so after a while, so she did that for many years, my wife and I adopted our beautiful daughter Phoebe. Where are you? Phoebe's over there. Thank you. And brought her back when she was about a year old from China. And pretty soon after that, Shauna felt like God wanted her to adopt a little girl from China as well. And what I asked Shauna, I talked to her the last week and said, hey, I would like you to tell me what you experienced in your waiting period that you learned about waiting and waiting on God. Because our adoption experience was pretty normal in that it took about a year. Some people call it a paper pregnancy because, like 9 months of being pregnant, you've got 9 or 12 months or about that you're waiting on this child. But it's all paperwork and waiting, and then wait till you hear, and then when you hear, then you go over. So Shauna's experience was different. Shauna decides about 6 months or so after, she had been thinking about it earlier, but about 6 months or so after we got Phoebe, Shauna decides to do that. Same agency, China, everything the same. She ended up waiting 6.5 years for Emma. 6.5 years. No word. No, the only thing they figured out was that China changed some rules, and they just kind of closed the doors and stopped letting families from here adopt. No reason was given. It was hard for her because she had prayed about this and she felt like God was leading her to do this, and then she was preparing, and then it was 6.5 years. I want to tell you, these are the things that Shauna said she learned in that adoption journey. She said she thinks it makes it more special. I wouldn't trade the experience, but here are a few things I learned in no particular order. So I'm just going to tell you what she said. There's 9 things. All right, don't have them on the screen. I just want you to listen. Number 1, waiting isn't easy, but it's worth it. Okay, when you're looking back, and you look at Emma, who's now 14 years old. Waiting isn't easy, but it's worth it. Number 2, God is actively working through the wait. You may not know what's going on. You may not feel like anything is going on, but God is actively working through the wait. One of the things that God did, one of the reasons I think Shauna was moved to start the process then is because during that 6.5 years of waiting, China changed the policy. Shauna is a single woman, and China changed the policy during that 6.5 years that said no single women can adopt. And so if she wouldn't have started the process when she did, she wouldn't have been able to do it. That's one thing that maybe have gone on in that time that God was doing. But it was, Shauna said, it's relationships. It's like she believed that God had a child specifically for her. We believed that with Phoebe, and we prayed that constantly. Number 3, God's timing is perfect. So she said once she got Emma, the urban ministry teens were older, and some of them married, and she got to raise Emma kind of with them and their families and talk about that all together. And she said it really helped her, encouraged her to do that. Number 4, God is faithful and will surely do what he says he will do. Sometimes we're in a waiting period, we start to doubt that, right? If we will wait on the Lord and be patient, we will see that God is faithful and he will surely do what he says he will do. Number 5, he was with me in the wait. She said, I wasn't alone. Not that I didn't feel lonely at times, but he would do little things along the way to let me know he was there and still working. Those times gave me strength to keep going. He was waiting with me, teaching me how to wait on him. Also, I learned that it is easier to wait in community. Having Tina invested in the wait with me kept me from growing weary. So when we're waiting, when we're struggling, when we're beginning to be impatient, find community. Tell them, talk to them, share, pray together. Draw strength from one another when your strength is fading because you're waiting for some answer or you're waiting for something to happen. You've been praying about it for years. Number 6, God was doing a work in me while I waited. I think we miss this sometimes. Preparing my heart and life to bring a child into it. Waiting changes you. And she said 2 times, such a long wait, there were other children that maybe became available, But other people took them, and so she kind of started to think about those as maybe this is the one. It's kind of like Abraham and Sarah waiting so long. Maybe this is what I should do, and maybe it's this. And then she gets her hopes up, and then those are adopted, and she's still waiting. But when she tried to speed things up, God was in control, and she had to remember that. Some people suggested going with another agency or trying another country, and she said they were well-meaning, but I had prayed about this and felt like God had led me to this. Why would I want to, change now? Number 7, I learned the importance of actively waiting. She said this without me telling her what I was going to focus on, but I wanted to focus on this, that biblical waiting is not passive. Waiting on the Lord is actively waiting. We're not just doing nothing. And she said that, living out my belief that one day Emma would be here and I would be as ready as possible when that day came. She said the 4 middle years were the hardest. So that first year she expected to be waiting. And then those 4 years in the middle, it was just hard, not understanding. Then she started hearing from the adoption agency that, hey, maybe the wheels are starting to turn again. And so then that last year was a little helpful. She prepared a room for Emma everywhere. She moved about 3 different times in that 6.5 years, and everywhere she went, she had prepared a room for Emma. She was actively waiting. She was expecting to God to work up. She was keeping up with paperwork. She was saving money. She was continuing her work in the urban ministry. The one thing she said that I didn't recognize, she said, actively waiting makes you vulnerable. And what she said was that she felt like people sometimes thought she was foolish by going this route. It doesn't seem to be working out. Why are you continuing to do it? Sometimes we who are impatient start to think that way about others, and we shouldn't do that. And if you ever feel that way, then just trust in God alone. All right, number 8, God will provide all that is needed while you wait. And number 9, waiting, even though it's hard, gave her something to look forward to. One of the things that she shared, her grandmother, who was in her 90s, had a bad heart and they wanted to do surgery. They didn't even know if she would live through it. Shauna prayed privately that her grandmother would get to see Emma. And her grandmother died before Emma came, but after the surgery, Shauna was with her in the recovery. And her grand, as Shauna calls her, said, I had a vision or dream of Emma. I saw her. She's beautiful. She loves to dance. And she said all these things about Emma. And so Shauna believes that God answered her prayer. Her grand was allowed to see Emma, even though she died before Emma actually came into her arms in her home. And those things that she said about Emma are true. So 9 things. What that did was it encouraged Shauna to wait expectantly. These 9 things, no regrets. We all have things that we wait on, right? Maybe it's a medical diagnosis. Maybe there's a fear. Maybe there's cancer. Maybe, we have things that we have to wait on. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe there's all kinds of things that we wait on and maybe become impatient. And I just want to encourage us to wait on the Lord in all these things and pray about it. Why do we have to wait? Acts 9, Paul's conversion. He's blinded, and then he has to wait 3 days for Ananias to come. And why? I think Paul really was thinking about God, what he was doing, what he had been doing during those 3 days. All right, it's patient, not passive. Waiting on the Lord shapes character, strengthens your faith, and prepares you for God's greater purposes. And biblical waiting is not passive idleness, but it is active faith in motion. This is what I want to do. We need to wait on God, and yet it's not idleness, it's not passive. We are doing things, preparing things, just like the apostles in Acts 1, meeting together, praying together, picking leaders, doing all these things to prepare for what God had told them to wait on. What do we learn from David? What do we learn from the apostles in Acts 1? What do we learn from Shauna's experience? I think it's these things. I've picked 3 that these things are important. Persistent prayer, fellowship, and unity in fellowship. That's what strengthens. I think that's what the apostles did. And then waiting in expectation, in faith, trusting in God and hoping in God. That's what I think waiting on the Lord does. I'm going to invite the praise team back up. And this one last verse we started, or we didn't, we talked about David and him waiting on the Lord, his soul finding rest in Psalm 62. In the last 2 verses of that psalm, it says this: one thing God has spoken, 2 things I have heard. So David's talking about what he's learned in the waiting. Power belongs to you, God, and with you, Lord, is unfailing love. In the waiting, while David is being hunted down and he's hiding out, he trusts in God alone, and this is what God teaches him in that waiting. That God is powerful, God is able to save him, and that our God, who sometimes makes us wait, has unfailing love and our needs in our best interest at heart. It's hard to wait, and you may be in a situation right now where you're waiting for something. I just encourage you to wait on the Lord, persistent prayer, wait in expectation, and do that with community. And then you will at some point see this is why. This is good. It is worth the wait. Let's stand and let's sing.